Okay, here's another video. Hope this one comes up.
We are now in the pool that cutting in the bedrock close to the Gihon Spring. And this is the main pool, the main area of the water supply to the city in the ancient time. When we excavate here, we take the dirt and we make a sifting with the water. In that sifting, we found a lot of fish bone, and we work very carefully to collect all the pottery, all the bones, all the scribe that we found inside in the dirt, and give us a lot of evidence about what happened here in the ancient time.
Okay, this is another picture of that massive Canaanite pool that was used to be a building source of the Gihon Spring for their water supplies for the city. It wasn't a very huge city, like I said. It was just, about 10 acres. Not that big. All right, Abraham and Isaac. Okay, see the little ram in the bush in the back there? Okay. Okay, now, Abraham met Melchizedek in Salem, ancient Jerusalem. He's going to come back to Mount Moriah and offer Isaac as a sacrifice. Okay, so he's coming back to the same place. And in Genesis 22, we find the story, and God tells him to get to the land of Moriah. And one of the mountains which I will tell you of, that's where he is to offer Isaac up. And this is a Jewish source. It's unanimous in Jewish thought that this particular place on Mount Moriah is the place where the temple would be in the future, and specifically where the altar of sacrifice would be. This is unique that you don't hear about this, but it's pretty much established by where it's located and in the biblical record that the very place where the brazen altar of sacrifice were for Solomon's temple and Herod's temple, it had to be in the same spot. Why? Because it was the place where Abraham offered Isaac on Mount Moriah. And that's just the beginning of it.
Is that story of Abraham and his son also in the Islam religion?
In the Quran? Mm-hmm. It probably is, but everything slanted toward the Quran is going to focus on Ishmael, the other son, and Isaac not being the seed that what they call Allah had destined the inheritance to go to. So the whole thing about Islam today versus Judaism is who is the son that God made the promises to? Was it Isaac or was it Ishmael? And that's what the battle is all about. And so in Romans it says that Abraham did not stagger after the promises of God. He never doubted God. But he was getting pretty old. His wife was barren and she was getting pretty old, and God said, you're going to have a seed. So he did what you and I would do. We help God. And so they had a plan. They went to the handmaid of Sarah, and they got Ishmael. He went ahead of God's plan, and look at the price that was paid for that. Okay? Little humor there. All right, here's a depiction of what Abraham might have saw. Of course, Melchizedek would have been here in this small little acreage. Mount Moriah actually begins down here, and the Temple Mount is not at the top, and it actually goes up beyond the Temple Mount. You have the Kidron Valley over here, the Tyropian Valley over here. This is where Abraham met Melchizedek, but this is where he's going to go when he offers Isaac up. Continuing in Genesis 22, now when God is talking about this place where you're going to go to offer Isaac up, he says, go to the place. Now when you and I say the place in English, it don't mean anything, right? Okay? The Hebrew word is makom, and it becomes very significant in Jewish thought that this isn't just a place, this is the place. Okay? Take them to the makom, the place. The Hebrew word, there it is understood to be the temple. It says in another verse in Genesis 22, And Abraham opened his eyes and he saw the place afar off, the Makom. How do you know it was the place? Verse 9. And they came to the place, Makom, which God had told him of. And Abraham built, in some of the translations, King James, it says an altar, but that's incorrect. The Hebrew says the altar. And the scholarly Hebrew language, the people that know the Hebrew language, said this was the altar that goes back even further than Abraham, which I haven't told you about yet. So the altar in the place. Genesis 22. So after, you know the story, the angel of the Lord, and then the ram is sacrificed, and there's no such word that's Jehovah. That's a man creation. That's the four-letter name of God, the Yod He Vav He. And he named this place, the Makom, the Yod He Vav He, or usually the Jewish people substitute Adonai, the Lord, in for that. The Lord Yireh. Yireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. What does that mean? Instead of saying, you know, that, it would be Yod He Vav He Yireh, and it means the place the Lord will see, because it is said to this day that on this mountain, Moriah, the Lord will be seen. And after the facts, you and I can understand that this was prophetic, because who was sacrificed, if you will, on this mountain in the future? Okay? All right. So the place, the Lord will be seen. He named it there. Now, it's interesting, because did you ever want to know how Jerusalem got its name? Okay? Now, according to the rabbis, and it makes sense because it's all there, it definitely, in Melchizedek's time, it was called Salem, which means peace. Okay? But God saw Melchizedek, a high priest unto God, this righteous king of righteousness, and Abraham, the guy that began the process for Isaac and Jacob and the children of Israel to come. He was called out among the nations. He named it Yireh, God will see. So God synthesized the two in honor of Melchizedek, his city Salem, and the place north of it where Abraham offered Isaac, and he called it Yireh, and you get Yireh Shalem, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Okay? It means the city of peace, or the place that peace will be seen. Okay? Now we go to Jacob. Jacob comes to a certain place, the Makom. And he took the stones of that place. And he lay down in that place. And when you see this in Hebrew, and you see it the way when God put, this is an overemphasis on the Hebrew, that God is making this place stand out. Okay? In English you might not see that, but in Hebrew it stands out. And this is the place that he had a vision that night of the ladder where he saw angels ascending and descending to heaven. And the rabbinic scholars understood that this is the place where the future sacrifices in the temple, that this was how the sweet-smelling savor went up and down to God when they were done right and properly to God for atonement and worship. So he went to the place. Again, Jacob, he said, in this place, this is the Lord's place. It's a house of God. It's the gate of heaven. The gate, the connection. Remember, New Jerusalem, earthly Jerusalem, he came in this connection point. Jerusalem is a connection point. I think I pretty much talked about that. Now I'll come a little bit further. In the wilderness with Moses, with the children of Israel, after they came out of Egypt, he commands the people that the Lord thy God, you shall appear, all the males, according to the Lord, in the place, in the Makom, which the Lord shall choose. And you shall not come empty-handed. That's a Hebrew idiom to mean you better come with sacrifice or an offering. You don't approach God with nothing. David, when he purchased the threshing floor, I'll give it to you free. You know, Your Majesty. No. It must cost me something. Okay? It must cost me something.